Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Seasonal Tokens Podcast, where Polar interviews people so you can do more investing and less gambling.
Hello everyone, it is Polar here, the CMO of the Seasonal Tokens. And today we're going to have a special guest in our episode. Please help me to welcome Brandon. Hello, Brandon.
Hey, Polar, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fine. Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. It's really an honor to have you on the show.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here, especially on your new show.
Yeah, thank you very much for this support. I can share a small secret here that Brandon is somehow a mentor of mine for this show and also one of my main, let's say, motivations to start this show. Thanks to him, I somehow felt the belief that I can do something like that. So thank you very much, Brandon, for that.
Of course. Not a problem.
So let me start with the first question that I ask everyone else. Can you introduce yourself and your background with a few words?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Brandon. For those of you that may know me, I am pretty well known in the Web3 space for having a podcast around blockchain and crypto. I've been doing it for quite a while now. For those that don't know me too well, there's a lot of things I do as well under the table outside of the podcast, which you can probably see in the background on my giant LED sign. But I run two blockchain consultancies, two Web3 consultancies, one in the United States in Nevada and one here in Colombia where I currently reside. And I've been in this space for almost a decade now. Those consultancies I've had for about half a decade. And generally what we do is we work with potential clients that want to figure out ways to either educate themselves, integrate the technology, or build out solutions or use cases. We take on a lot of clients in the private sector, but we've also ventured into the public sector as well. Additionally, on a personal note, I also am an author. I'm currently publishing with Forbes right now a book on blockchain and how it disrupts the traditional financial system. That book is titled The Future Economy, and it is planned to be launched at the end of this year, the very beginning of next year. It's going on pre-sale in August, and we have a newsletter that also is representative of the book called the Future Economy Newsletter that is very similar, and it just goes a lot deeper and a bit further than where the book goes into explaining how not only these things are happening in Web3, but how you can get more involved and how you can begin to profit and make successful investments in this space. And it's a very valuable resource. I'm sure we'll talk about more of that in a bit, but in a nutshell, I do a lot of things. I'm in blockchain.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really, really long view and experience, I think, especially in the blockchain world. So yeah, I definitely want to talk about this book because it's very, very interesting. But before we start this big topic, I would say I'm very interested, and I'm sure that our listeners will be very interested to know, what has actually attracted you to the crypto world?
Yeah, I think my story began when I was first getting into college back in 2013, maybe slightly before that as well. I knew what Bitcoin was for a long time, but there really was no industry that really existed yet until Ethereum became more substantiated in 2017. And I think my first involvement was around 2013 because I got invested into Bitcoin, into Litecoin around that time. I started playing around with the idea that the space is investable, that there's value being held in these tokens and that they could be used for something in the future. It, again, was very, very new at the time. Very skeptical, very volatile as much as it is today. Actually, probably far more then than it was today. But my first leg into the space was as an investor. And then by the time I graduated college, I had made a fairly sizable investment into Ethereum that did very well. And that kind of became my launching point to go further into the space. Because originally I was planning to go to medical school. I got my degree in neuroscience. But when I had to weigh that out with my nice Ethereum investment that paid off, I had to decide if I wanted to really go down that route or if I wanted to explore this industry a bit more. And through Ethereum, I was able to see how much further the space could go in terms of the technology, what could be built, what kind of solutions could be found for real world problems and what things can be fixed in today's society and today's economies very early before these stuff really existed. So knowing that Ethereum was evolving the space and that it was opening up this ecosystem, I wanted to get myself more involved. So I opened up a company. I launched a podcast. I was actually one of the first to run a mining operation in the state of Oregon. I had hundreds of thousands of miners at my disposal. I built all of them from scratch. I was one of those guys buying GPUs and learning how to set up the software and mining everything from Bitcoin to Litecoin to Zcash to Zencash to Ethereum, and then finding ways to plug it into algorithms and trade them back and forth and try to make money. So I've been involved in this space for a long time, from an investor standpoint, from a miner, as a consumer, as a business owner and developer. I've been doing a lot of different things. But I think that moment in time around 2017 was when I really first got involved. And then it kind of led to a whole series of events and things I did. And then the podcast I did shortly after that for the first time as well. And it's probably the most important thing I have done in the space, because it has connected me to a network of people in this industry that I've never thought I would ever have before, and that I think is kind of rare. It's one thing to do business in the space. It's one to be an influencer or to do something cool. But when you're talking to all those people all the time, the doors open everywhere. And all of a sudden, you're able to do things that you didn't think you were going to be able to do before, and have people on a first person basis be able to call someone, email someone that is, CEO of something now, or an executive of something now, or a founder that really was starting out very young back then. So I've seen tremendous growth personally in my own network and my own businesses just from doing the podcast and nothing else. But that's a little bit about my backstory and how I kind of got into the space. And it's been a long journey, and I've done so many different things. I think I've tried just about everything as well.
I think that I haven't heard such a long story about crypto before. So it sounds like you have gone through many different phases and stages of the crypto world, and you have been able to meet a lot of great people. So are you still doing mining, or you have stopped it?
I'm not doing mining anymore. I was doing it for a period of time, but at some point it becomes very difficult to get profitable. The problem with this market is it's very cyclical, and there's a lot of underlying things with the tech that can affect the price other than geopolitics or things that are trending in the space or what's happening in the economies. The hashing rate, the mining hash rate, the mining difficulty levels, the amount of people that are buying, the dips in supply that happen with certain cryptos and their tokenomics models all factor into the price as well. Many people don't really understand that, because most people didn't really get into mining. There's a lot of people that bought maybe one or two miners and hooked it up and made a couple bucks, but there's not a lot of people that ran a full operation. So from having done that, I know how expensive it is, and I know how much effort and time needs to go into try and make it profitable. And I can tell you, it's a very difficult business. The reason I'm not doing it anymore is because it costs too much in rent and electricity, in HVAC systems, in cooling systems to try and run this nonstop and hold on to those tokens long enough for you to see a profit turn. Because some days you're going to mine something and you're going to break even. Some days you're going to mine something and you're going to always be down 10, 20 bucks a day. And then some days you're going to mine, you're going to be up 50, 100. It's very volatile as much as it's just investing and buying the tokens. And it's just not a space I want to be in. The only way you see success with a mining operation or being in the proof of work side of things is if you're doing it at extreme scale. And even then it's incredibly risky because these miners are always turning over every couple of years. You have to get new ones. They break a lot easier than people think. They're a little fallible, a little flimsy. They require a tremendous amount of power. And as the difficulty and the hash rates go up, they just become irrelevant. You have to get new versions, and they're like $1, $2, $3 a pop sometimes. So there's a lot of reasons I don't want to be in that side of the industry, but I did get a start in this industry by being a part of the proof of work side of things. And it was an interesting experience, and I think I learned a lot, and I think that's the biggest takeaway for me.
Nice. So if I understand you right, if our listeners are more in the beginning stage of their crypto journey, you would suggest them to think more about investing in crypto than starting a mining process.
Yeah, I think you're better off investing just straight up. Like if you have a couple grand, just put that in Bitcoin. I mean, there's no point in buying a mining rig or a machine or building one because the ROI is very low if you only have one. Again, you need to do this at really high volume. You need hundreds of these machines to turn a decent profit, especially when the market isn't good. Like right now, it's very difficult to do. You're better off taking that maybe a couple grand you have, and instead of buying a mining rig, just buying some Bitcoin or learning how to day trade than you are to actually profit in that side of things. So I think unless you really understand it, it's not for the average person. You're far better off just, making a normal investment and then doing due diligence to make sure that, it has some long-term value and some longevity.
Yeah.